Hello and welcome to the BookTube channel, Jack in the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. In today's video, I want to talk about books that have female main characters that are 30 plus years old. I know, ancient, right? Well, June 21st is my half birthday. I was born on the winter solstice, December 21st, so the summer solstice, June 21st, is my half birthday. I will be 36 and a half, and this just makes me think that we really need more representation of female main characters that are 30 plus. I feel like those books are out there. I feel like what's popular on BookTube and Bookstagram and Book Talk right now is much younger characters in their teens and 20s because that's the demographic of a lot of these social media sites. And so we gravitate towards familiarity and what we can relate to and see ourselves in. And there's no harm in that. I have just found that I need more variety, but that's just something that I notice. It's harder for me to relate to these younger characters, and I do feel like there is an extreme shortage of more mature female main characters. So I decided almost a year ago to start keeping a list when I was reading and came across female main characters that were over 30 years old or 30 and above. And it's mostly prevalent to me in romances, but it could be in any genre of book. In fact, I would love it to see represented more in horror and fantasy and all sorts of genres outside of romance. This is just typically where I have seen it. Since I decided to start this list, I have identified 13 female main characters 30 or above across various genres, and a couple of these I have not read, but I have been made aware of the age of the character, so I'll definitely call those out as I come across them. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. What is a book that you have read with a female main character that is 30 plus years old or just more mature? I would love to see what everybody comes up with, so please comment that. We are going to go from youngest to oldest because I love to put things in order. And we're kicking things off with a contemporary romance called Real. She is 30 years old, he is 37. This is a love story between Canon and Neva. It's kind of a grumpy sunshine kind of dynamic. He is a famous director, she is a new up-and-coming actress. And what I love about Neva, so she is a sunshine character, but she is also battling a chronic illness. And this is something that just gives her character so much more depth. And she does put things into perspective so well. Like, don't sweat the small stuff. She has bigger things going on with her chronic illness, and she tries to not let it hold her back or give her excuses in life. She's a very hard worker. She's dedicated to this project that they are working on. But I feel like she brings so much maturity to the relationship. Sure, that could be because she's 30, but it could also be because she has a positive outlook on life and she is dealing with these bigger things and this chronic illness. Who knows? One thing's for sure, I really love this couple, this love story. I bawled my eyes out with this because of the heaviness of what this couple had to go through. It was really good. Next up is another contemporary romance called 7 Days in June. Now, this one, I have to be honest with you, I didn't enjoy it because even though our main characters are both 32 years old, I thought the female main character was still very childish, self-centered, and entitled. So, you know what? Those characteristics don't discriminate. It's not just those younger characters that I feel that way about. This is a great example, right? And the reason I still wanted to put this on the list is because it met the criteria, because our female main character is over the age of 30. But so many people love this second chance romance about two people that spent some time together when they were kids in high school. They never forgot about each other. They both became best-selling authors, and they write about each other in their books. So that flame has never been extinguished, and they are brought back together, and it's this second chance romance story. She is a single parent, so I do think that's an element that you will see more when the characters are in their 30s versus these characters that are in their early 20s. So having that single parent representation I think is really important. So just because this book wasn't for me doesn't mean it won't be for you. I still want to put it on the list because it's very popular and she's 32. A contemporary romance called All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata is next on the list. We have a female main character who is 33 years old and her love interest is 42. So we have a little bit of an age gap here. And I'm gonna try not to gush too much about this book. I have a whole dedicated reading vlog to it because I loved it. It is one of my favorite contemporary romances, if not my all-time favorite. So I'm gonna try not to dig too much into it. But highlighting on what her age, her maturity brings to the situation is that Aurora is leaving a failed relationship like a divorce or the dissolvement of like a 14-year relationship or something. And that really has an impact. That significant relationship, that amount of time is a whole lifetime. So she is really starting over, finding herself again, trying to figure out what's important to her, who she is. And that's really what her maturity and her age brings to the table. Sure, younger characters can have heartbreak and have tragic things happen to them, but they don't have a 14-year relationship that fell apart unexpectedly and changed the course of their lives. A lot of times, right? So that is All Roads Lead Here. It is a age gap, grumpy sunshine, small town, slow burn romance that has unconventional family structure, which is really cool. I mean, it has nothing to do with ages or anything of the characters, but just lots to love in this book. Check out that video, that reading vlog, because I can go on and on about this one. Turning to the horror category, I read The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, and I have noticed that T. Kingfisher writes female main characters that are 30 and above. In The Hollow Places, her main character is 34 years old, and she is moving to stay with her uncle after a divorce. She is totally devastated by this. She doesn't really know how to handle it. She breaks down a lot in just overwhelming despair, but there are some very scary events, like a portal to another world, and she sees some creepy stuff that really puts her divorce into perspective. Maybe it's not so much of a big deal as she had originally thought, but it did make her character more interesting, give her character more depth to be dealing with this real life situation of a failed marriage. So I like that, and I appreciate that T. Kingfisher typically has female main characters that are 30 plus. The next book on the list has a female main character that is 35. The book is Letters to Molly, and this one is fantastic because it is a second chance romance between a divorced couple. Again, divorce is something that is much more common for people in their 30s rather than early 20s. I mean, it can happen, right? But typically this is something that's more relatable as people age. So I think that's a really cool factor. And this is a story where they have kids together, and so they still co-parent, and they're like on good terms, even though they, still went through their stuff, I'm sure. And she starts receiving letters that her ex-husband wrote her. They're showing up in her mailbox that he wrote from when they first started dating. And there's just a handful of letters, but each kind of embody an important moment in their early relationship. But the twist is, he's not the one sending them. And there's a reason that he doesn't want her to get all the letters. So this plot really intrigued me. I gotta be honest with you, I didn't jive with this book. This book was not for me. Again, I still didn't like the female main character all that much. Just because she's closer to my age doesn't mean that I'm gonna agree with everything she does. And a lot of those factors I found to be really aggravating with younger characters still definitely happens in more mature characters. So this isn't immune from those irritations, but hey, Letters to Molly is a book that has another female main character over the age of 30. Next on the list is a book that I have not read, but I have heard that in the book Carrie, Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, the main character is 37 years old, and she is challenged by a new up-and-comer tennis player who's looking to beat her record. So she is coming out of retirement so she can hold on to that record. Now, at 37 years old, this athlete has a whole successful career behind her. And that's not something that you get in characters that are in their teens and early 20s. Like, the dedication and time it takes to be successful in a career like that, or any career, it takes time, right? It takes time to build that expertise and build that reputation for yourself. So that representation is going to be more impactful in a character that is 30 plus years old, as in Carrie Soto is back. Another book that I have not read yet is a fantasy series on Kindle Unlimited called Magical Medlife Madness. The female main character in this series is 40 years old, and she is looking to start over from her divorce. And fantasy ensues from there. This is on my Kindle TBR. I really want to check it out. That whole starting over concept is very alluring to me, and it makes it more relatable that it's happening from divorce. I think with fantasy books, it kind of happens, you know, maybe they have like a huge trauma, like their family is like brutally unalived, and so they're starting over in that way. I've seen that done a lot with younger characters, but having it be something as simple and yet super impactful and devastating as divorce gives it like a more realistic spin. So I'm excited to check this one out. And 40 years old is like an iconic age, especially for women who are not allowed to age, right? We're not allowed to get older. That's the thing. You're only good when you're in your 20s, right? Like, I'm over the hill being 36 and a half. But having a character that is 40 years old, I am really excited to dive into this series. Next up, I have a thriller called The Golden Couple. In this one, the therapist is 41 years old, and she deals with couples. She's like a marriage counselor or couples counselor. And the wife in the pairing that she is now counseling is 38 years old. So you got like a double whammy there with two female main characters that are over the age of 30. This is a domestic thriller, and I really enjoyed this one because our therapist, the one who is 41 years old, has lost her husband to illness. I can't remember if he had cancer or something, but she is dealing with the grief of losing her husband, but also she's battling with this guilt over the relief that she feels because he was suffering so much and he deteriorated so much over time that she has this little bit of relief. And those complex emotions were something that I really respected in this. Not necessarily that I can relate to it, but I can understand it, right? And that kind of thing. I guess you could see that in younger characters. Maybe I have seen characters that are in their teens or in their early 20s that are dealing with a loss. But I don't know. I think there's so much that comes with the experience and the lifetime that her and her husband had together coming to an end. And all of this is like the backdrop for this thrilling plot line with this couple that is dealing with an infidelity, and that's the real story. But it's just something that the maturity of these characters bring to the story to give it a little bit more substance and I'm sure relatability in a lot of aspects. I have not yet read the 5th season, but I plan to in July, which is next month. And one cool thing about this sci-fi that is super hyped, I've heard nothing but stellar things about it. The main character is 42 years old and she is a mother. So that's really interesting. You don't really see that. Okay, I don't really see that in a lot of books that are hyped up in the sci-fi fantasy space, seeing a mom. So I am excited about that factor of it. I don't know much about this book yet. I think it's apocalyptic, like the world ends with every season and some people have powers, but that's considered dangerous, so you don't want people to know that you have powers. I don't know. I'll find out more. I'm planning on doing a reading vlog for the trilogy, so I'm probably not hyping it up that much, but I'm not really trying to. So that video will be coming in July. Back to the romance category, I have The Pool Boy downloaded to my Kindle. I really want to read this spicy age gap romance, and it's like a reverse romance because in this one, it's an older woman and a younger man. So she is 45, he is 23 or 24, I believe, and he is like her best friend's son. So much taboo going on in this one. I'm excited to see how this goes. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued about this age gap romance, and 45 years old, I love that age represented in a spicy book, because again, over 40, like, women aren't allowed to age, but if they do, like, they're not allowed to have sexuality, right? That's just forbidden, unheard of. So I kind of like the idea of a spicy book with a female that's 45. I know that any fans of fantasy books watching this video are wondering when I'm going to talk about the adventures of Amina al-Sarfi, and I'm going to talk about it right now. So we have a retired pirate named, shocker, Amina al-Sarfi, and I don't know how old she is. In one point in the book, she talks about being happily past 40. So I don't think she is 40 years old, as I've heard of in a lot of like reviews of this book. I think she's well past 40, but she has like a 10-year-old daughter, so I guess it's possible. I don't really know, but we do have another fantasy book with a mother, and she would do anything for her kid, even if that means coming out of retirement to go back to pirating for one last score that should set them up for life. And another thing that I really liked about this, I mentioned how with maturity comes more of a reputation and more of an established career, and that is exactly what we have here. Amina is world-renowned for her pirating skills, for her strength, for her badassness. And what's also kind of funny is in this is she talks a lot about how her body isn't what it used to be. Like, her joints creak, or her knee hurts, or her back hurts. She has these little aches and pains, and they don't stop her from being a badass, but they are just awarenesses in her body that she has. So despite that, she still has this awesome reputation. People know who she is, and sometimes they try to pull that off for characters like in their early 20s, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, not as realistic, right? But when you have decades of experience, I feel like that is much more appreciated and realistic, and I loved it. I love this book in general, but the character being happily past 40, I think subconsciously added to a lot of the things that I loved. Being at the halfway point in 2023, I cannot do this video without one of my favorite reads so far from the year, and that is the horror book Mary. In this one, Mary is 50 years old, and she is experiencing some really strange things. Strange things. She's seeing things, hearing things, all this weirdness, and she tries bringing it up with doctors, and she is just dismissed because they're saying, it's probably menopause. This is completely normal. It's completely normal to see things in the mirror. You're just about to go through menopause, and totally dismiss her for her age. That was interesting. And that's a real thing, women being dismissed in like the healthcare system, and when they complain of aches and pains. So first of all, real issue for women, but second of all, really tackling this unseen nature of older women. And it talks about how that happens when women outlive their usefulness. They are no longer mothers. They are no longer lovers. They're no longer this vision of beauty and like to be stared at, so people look away. It was fantastic. This is described as Stephen King's Carrie, if Carrie was going through menopause. And I actually really like Nat Cassidy's author's note at the end, because Nat Cassidy is a male, and so he addresses this whole concept of, do I have the right to tell a story about women and women's bodies, knowing that I can't relate to it? And his whole author's note was really insightful and good and added a lot to it. But yeah, this book is all about women aging, but in a fun, terrifying horror way. The last book I have on this list is the thriller Killers of a Certain Age. I listened to this audiobook, and it is about a group of retired spies and assassins. So they are in their 60s and they're retiring from their profession, but they're sailing on their cruise for their retirement party, and they realize that they are now the targets. And so action and chaos ensues as they try to figure out why this is, how to stop it. And again, these women have built up careers, expertise, skills in what they do. And because they've done this their whole lives, and we flash back from when they first started and they were like in their prime versus now, and their bodies are a little bit slower than they used to be, but they are still capable of great things. And these women are used to being unseen. Just as I mentioned in the book Mary, how people tend to look away from them and not see them, they tend to make people more uncomfortable than anything, so they can slip by unnoticed, and they use that to their advantage. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek look at aging and like older women and the issues they deal with. That's my list for books that I have identified with characters that are 30 years or older, and I am always on the lookout for more, so please be sure that you have commented with any ideas that you have of more mature female main characters. And hey, even if they're not mature in years, if you know of a book with female characters of any age that are more mature, I would love to hear those too. So happy to see your comments down below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this video. I'll see you in the next one.